Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Exponential Wealth. I'm your host, Aaron Moore. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Really excited about today's episode with our special guest, Joseph Fagan. He is a 3D lead graphic designer and has done some incredible work at some technology companies here in the Bay Area. Won't go into too much detail about the specifics. And so I want to give you a heads up on that. One of these themes that we're going to talk about are probably going to touch somewhere in your life, right? So the four we're going to talk about is equity compensation. So how are technology professionals and others who are working for publicly traded companies getting paid here in the Valley? Number two, Joseph and his wife were actually originally from the South, from Alabama. They moved here to the Bay Area, and that was a huge pivot for them. And they also did a career change to come out here. And that's going to be a story that a lot of us share, including myself. So looking forward to talking to Joseph about moving to the Bay Area and pivoting his career. And then finally, we're going to be talking about some of the major challenges that Joseph and his wife have had, as well as Noah's many others. It's not a secret. Buying real estate, getting into your first home here in the Bay Area, and some of the pros and cons between renting and owning. And I know a lot of you have a lot of questions about that. And so it's always great to talk about that because the landscape is always changing. I want to say before we get into it with Joseph today, that important to mention that this is our first bear market that we've gone through together. We've had an incredible run the last handful of years, including some of the highest asset prices that have ever been recorded late into 2021. So we are now in some would say a recession or pre-recession. Those aren't my words. These are words that economists and others are using and are being ricocheted all over social media. I know that's on everyone's minds. So if you want to reach out to talk to me and team about what's happening in the markets and to make sure that you're doing all you can to protect yourself and your family, we are here. So reach out to us and schedule time in a confidential place. We'll meet over Zoom to talk to you about what's going on with you. All right. So without further ado, Joseph, let's get started. Joseph, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. How's it going?
I'm doing excellent. It's so great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
So, Joseph, here's the deal. Every week, 2 weeks, we're interviewing somebody of interest for listeners to have an insight into essentially how to grow your wealth, how to be successful, right, and how to make the right decisions with your money, and how do you know you're on the right track to do those things. So you know my role as a wealth advisor to help clients do that. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your life and where the rubber meets the road when you need financial advice in your life.
Sure. Well, so where to begin? My wife and I came here from Birmingham, Alabama, originally, and it was a little bit of a sticker shock moving to Northern California, but it was an amazing experience. We're so glad we did it. I worked at a high-end German automotive company for about 5 years and, did some really good work there and really enjoyed it. And recently, I've pivoted to working for a new automotive startup that is really working in an area that is close to my heart and really is what I'm most happy to be doing. And it's exciting, but it's also some new challenges for me and some new things to think about as far as wealth management goes, some things I've never been exposed to before. So it's been interesting, but I'm enjoying the journey.
When you say that you pivoted your career, did that happen before you came from Alabama to California or afterwards?
So we had been here, I don't know, about 6 years when that happened. And it was a little bit of a shock, but it was a very fortuitous thing. We were very glad to move into a new area. And when I pivoted, this opportunity became available, and I didn't look back.
Nice. Well, I want to talk to you about that, and I'm really excited to hear more about this pivot of yours. And I think the listeners out there know that I had a career pivot as well. And so that played a huge impact in my life. But you said some really important things that I wanted to touch on. One of which was there were a lot of things that you didn't know, and moving to the Bay Area was a challenge. Without being overtly obvious, what are some of the challenges that you found living in the Bay Area for you and your wife?
Buying a home. Buying a home is very challenging, because you got to have money saved up for a down payment. And if you want to stay in the Valley proper, I mean, you're talking $1.8 to $2 million for a decent sized home in a reasonable area. And that's not really in the realm of possibility for us right now, but we're working towards that.
So you and your wife are renting currently?
We are.
Yeah. There's clients of ours that choose to rent on purpose. There's some advantages to renting. I think the cover of the Wall Street Journal said interest rates have gone to 5%, which is just incredible because as of 6 months ago, people were getting interest rates in the 2% range, right? 2.9%. Yeah. What does home ownership mean to you? Is that important to you to be a homeowner here on the peninsula in the Bay Area?
It is important to us. We back in Alabama, where we're from, we own a home. We still own a home. We rent it out, and we manage it remotely. But home ownership here in California is important to us, purely from a practical standpoint, from a space issue, just having more space, from a privacy issue, not being right next door, literally a wall away from your neighbor. Being able to have parties and play loud music without, disturbing people too much.
Nice. Joseph, I notice you have your background blurred, but I think that's a computer and a keyboard. So you got some kind of music production happening.
I do. I'm a keyboard player, and I make ambient music. I just released an album actually on SoundCloud, which is available, called Adam's Ark. But there's a cutoff for that, right? I can't play past 9:30 because if I really start getting on the keyboard and start jamming, tapping my foot, the downstairs neighbors can hear it. The neighbors over here can hear it. And it gets to be a hassle. You don't want to disturb anybody, but you also want to be able to express yourself. So it's a balancing act, but it's one we're ready to move away from. My wife and I are pretty much done with apartment living. It's been great. We've enjoyed it. The place we're in now is an incredible place. Our landlord's amazing. But yeah, I think we're ready to move on to living in a house. But, that's a few years away.
Right. So what are the decision points that you're considering? What do you need to do now in order to set yourself up to be able to buy this house in a few years from now? What's the decision-making matrix that you're going through at the moment?
Well, it's interesting because, obviously there's savings involved. You got to stash money away. You want to invest a little bit more aggressively just so that, your money's making money and not just rotting away in a bank somewhere. But, with new financial opportunities where I work, because at work, we're given RSUs, which I've never dealt with before. And that's a whole tax challenge, tax liability challenge, and some other things that I'm learning about and trying to figure out. So it's an interesting thing to navigate, but it's an amazing opportunity to have. It's a great thing.
Yeah. Joseph, that's where I wanted to pivot there. Actually, you said that you've been compensated in new and unique ways at your new employer, and that was a kind of an onboarding challenge to figure these things out. How are you currently compensated? I don't need to know numbers and details, but just as far as the different ways you're compensated, what does that look like at your current employer?
Right. So there's a base salary. There's a bonus situation, which is based on the company's performance. There is RSUs, which were part of my initial compensation. And there's a program that allows us to actually purchase stock pre-tax. So all those combined together kind of give me my sort of overall nest egg that we're sort of hoping will go to the moon, as they say.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I sure hope they do, Joseph, because I'm rooting for you. I want you to be able to get in that home. I think that homeownership, to fuse the two topics has really become elusive for a lot of people. And
It has,
I really like to say that when you and the home are ready and that home that you are going to buy, they kind of come together in this magical moment.
Absolutely.
It's not like you get the 20% down, you get the pre-authorization from the lender, you figure out all the expenses and everything's lined up, and then boom, it happens. I think that's the technical part of what you need to do in order to be ready to buy a home. But then there's that, I don't speak French, but je ne sais quoi. It's that thing that connects you with the home that you're going to buy. Because if you could have all the financing in the world, but if somebody comes and puts a couple $100,000 more on the house because there's some memory of it, or they have some, emotional attachment that's worth more, or they just have more money, you're going to be priced out of it. So there's got to be something else, some other,
that's the challenge,
right? That's the challenge that a lot of,
especially here in the Bay, is, oftentimes, even in the place where my wife and I currently live, which is actually a condo complex. So we sublet from our lady who owns this place. But we've seen places here just get bidded up and up and up and up. And it's like, wow, even if we wanted to buy here, you got to be ready to hit the ground running, because 20% ain't enough.
Right. Right. So let's get back to your comp, right? Because I think that I'm not running this podcast to make you feel less hope than when you first started listening. What we want to do is give hope to listeners that, hey, actually, if I do these things and take these steps, I might be in a position to actually buy a home, right? Yeah. For example, because you said that was a really important goal of yours. I've bought and sold one home, and I'm on my second home now. And it wasn't until I internalized the desire that I wanted to buy a home that really all the other things kind of fell into place. And it's not like it happened overnight, happened years later, right? But I think that the desire and the thought in your mind, you dream it, then you build it, right? And then it will come.
That's right.
So as you're dealing with your new structure, let's talk about RSUs. You said that was a new concept for you. RSU stands for restricted stock unit.
Right.
Typically, employers are using these grants of company stock. You have to be working for a publicly traded company as extra income incentive that vests on a schedule, right? They give you a grant. It might be $100,000, might be $80,000, whatever the number is. Some companies it vests on a quarterly basis immediately when you get it, right? Other companies we work with, they give you a block grant, and then it takes 3 years for the first RSUs to clear, then you can sell them.
Right.
How are you viewing RSUs? There's a lot of in the Valley. There's a lot of loyalty that employees have to their companies. I don't want to name any specific companies, but you could just open the news and see any one of them.
Sure.
People feel that their company stock is worth a lot, and that also their growth potential is there, and that the stock is going to grow, right? So there's some hesitance to selling those RSUs. But how are you thinking about them now in terms of your goal of buying a home?
Well, first, I'd just like to say that they're an incredible incentivizer, because I'm already all in with my company, right? I am like fully behind their mission and what they're trying to do. Added to the fact that now I'm financially connected to their, how well they do. I'm trying every day as hard as I can to make sure that they succeed beyond, anyone's wildest expectations. So that's been huge. It's been a nice incentive to get. But the way I view it is very long term, right? This is not like, boy, as soon as these things vest, I'm going to sell. That's not the plan. The idea is to try to hopefully have these turn into a bit of wealth generation for me, and I can sell at strategic moments certain amounts and then reinvest that money into something that will hopefully grow over a much longer period.
Okay. Right? Because that's essentially what investing is, right? You're lending your money to a company, hoping that they do something incredible with it and their product, and that the public and markets respond with wanting to own that company because of the progress and the success that they have. Right?
Yeah.
And that in turn rewards you as the shareholder. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Joseph, it is extremely tough on the peninsula here to get into real estate, but I've heard plenty of success stories, including my own success story buying a home here in San Mateo County. And I think that, for those that are listening, for those that feel that it's too out of reach, I would say that keep focus on your goal, and it will be attainable. It might not be this year, it might not be next year. And hey, Joseph, by the time that you go to buy, hopefully interest rates will go back down to 2.99.
Absolutely.
Because, right, or prices will soften a little bit, right? Because buying a home on the peninsula, I think we've said it 20 times now on the podcast right now. It's a challenge. It is definitely a challenge.
For sure.
Yeah.
But so not impossible.
Is not impossible, right? I think that's a big thing. That's a big thing. But I think that part of that impossibility is that, people don't pursue it, right? Or people say that like, oh, I'm just going to continue to rent. The mortgage is too expensive. Then I have to pay property tax. If you buy into an apartment or a condo situation that has an HOA, then that's an additional cost, right? So there's all these things, but do not let that discourage you from, I'm going to project here, Joseph, from getting that home where you have that space that you can produce your music and
That's right.
And work from home, right? Because I think a lot of us are still kind of working from home, from March of 2020. So
indeed,
let me ask you this, because I want to pivot a little bit about your rental, right? You have this rental in Birmingham, Alabama. I know other people are trying to build a portfolio of real estate, and a lot of them are doing it out of the area. Was that intentional or by accident or by design? What's your thinking around that investment property?
So it was not really by design. The opportunity that I was given that sort of moved us out here to California happened rapidly, and we didn't really have time to sell the home. That was initially kind of what we thought we might do. It actually sat with no one living in it for a few months until we found the folks we were going to rent to. And thankfully they've been great, and they've been renting it for quite a few years now. And it's kind of taken that load off our mind, so we don't have to worry about it. It's kind of self-sufficient at this point. So, it was kind of just a necessity of the moment, really.
Got it. I think some of the best opportunities are.
Yeah.
The when you force something is when some things can go wrong, right? So kind of letting them happen naturally, right, can be a big boom.
Indeed.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk, I have a lot of different questions that I want to ask you here, Joseph. And I know that we're all buttoned up here on Zoom and on record here on the camera. But let me ask you this, because I think this is important, right? As people are deciding, how they want to approach life, what goals are important to them, their legacy. What was one of the most impactful financial or otherwise decisions that you've made in your life that has gotten to you where you are now?
Well, there have been a few. One of the first ones that I did was going back to school. So I was kind of working in retail and really hating it. And I went back to school. I ended up going to Vancouver Film School in British Columbia and getting my education in computer animation and visual effects. And that made a huge difference in my career. So that was an amazing investment in myself, which was important. I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't change a thing. But the other thing that we did, and this is something Tracy and I kind of did together, once we moved here and kind of stabilized our financial situation and figured out, the house can take care of itself back in Alabama, and we can just kind of focus on, finding a decent apartment to live in that's not too expensive and kind of start saving again, because it took a lot of our savings to move out here. Right. And I did some things that I'll definitely do differently if I had to do it all over again. Like, I would never move all our furniture out here like I did before. My advice to anyone moving across country is sell everything you have and buy new stuff when you get there. Because you'll find when you get to where you are going, you'll wish you never spent all that money hauling all that furniture and all that stuff. It's just not worth it. So that was a big lesson. But the biggest thing that Tracy and I did together, the thing that's made the most impact on our lives, both from a financial standpoint and just in general, the way it's, sort of opened our future up, is connecting with a financial advisor. That this is not an ad. I'm being real here. I mean, Tracy and I grew up in the 1970s and 80s, very poor financial education. You didn't really receive any in school. Our parents were really not the best teachers for that kind of thing. I'd gotten into a job where I was making really good money, better than I'd ever made before. And, we were saving money, but it was just sitting there in the bank. It wasn't doing anything. And she and I talked several times, like, we got to figure out what to do, because we can't just let this money sit here and do nothing, because it's not benefiting us, right? This is not what wealthy people do. They make their money work for them. And I knew that from reading several books, and I knew that we had to do something. So we connected with a financial advisor who expertly helped us and really put us in the right direction. And now our money is growing and our money is actually working for us, which is fantastic. And it's given me and my wife a sense of security we didn't have before, because we got a late start in investing in our retirement and all that kind of stuff. So we had to be very aggressive about that kind of thing. And that's where having a financial advisor was invaluable.
No, thank you for sharing that, Joseph. Yeah. I think a lot of people didn't grow up with financial education, right? Yeah. I think people nowadays probably get most of their financial education from social media.
Yeah.
Right. I think that there has been a sea change in the last handful of years with the proliferation of information online. Interestingly enough, I think crypto created this opportunity for people to learn about finance and investing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But maybe even before that, because I don't want to veer into that, but just that the young people are pumped up and excited about new financial instruments that, you said growing up in the 70s and 80s, I think kids were inundated with the DARE program more than they were with right. So what not to do as opposed to what to do.
Right.
So, and Joseph, I mean, my background as an educator, that's one of the most important things to me and it's why I'm doing this, right? Is for people to learn about the basics. It took you finding a financial advisor and then going through a planning process, right?
Yep.
And that is something that all people should have, right? Not everybody needs to hire a financial advisor that might not be in a position to afford that, or they might be very resourceful and get information online and come up with a plan. But if you're not planning by design, then you're planning by default. And that home ownership and that dream to reach there is could be even more out of reach.
That's right.
Yeah. So in terms of where you see yourself in the next handful of years, where do you see yourself most at risk? Because you've laid out these goals, you've got this amazing job, we have these things moving along, you've got this career trajectory and growth, and you're in a great opportunity now. Where's the risk presenting itself at this time?
So I think it's very tied to my goals, right? I have a very, some might say unrealistic, but aggressive goal of I want to retire before I'm 60. So I'm 51 now. I'd like to retire ideally by 55. And retirement for me, looks like living not very differently than I do now, but with the addition of being able to travel around the world a lot more than I'm currently doing, travel a lot back home to Birmingham to see family, and just having that freedom of knowing I don't have to go to an 8 to 5 every day and look forward to the weekend, right? Because you can only do that for so long. So I'm ready for that. So my risk is not playing my cards right and following the plan and that not being able to happen.
Joseph, I think you just touched on something that I would say 99% of anyone that's going to listen to this, you just piqued everyone's interest. How do I retire before the government tells me I can retire, right?
Exactly.
And when the government tells you when to retire, guess when they tell you to retire? Later and later. It was 65. Now it's 67, right?
Yep.
There's projections that Social Security, newsflash, is in jeopardy of not being fully funded. And unless we do something about that, we as a nation, right, are going to be in great pain. So the clients that I work with are passionate about coming up with a game plan. You don't have to leave work, right? Not work or retire, because some people never want to retire. They're passionate about their work, but you don't have to go to work, right? When you're 55, you don't have to go 6 days a week. I say that because if you work in the tech world, there's no way you're working 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. No, especially during work from home, during these last 2 years, you've been working more hours, right? You've been working on the weekends at night, checking your phone, right? Checking your Slack messages, seeing if anybody pinged you over the weekend. And they did. They want you to update the model.
Right.
So having a plan, Joseph, I think that's incredibly smart, right? Having a plan to reach financial independence before Uncle Sam tells you that you can, I think is probably one of the smartest things I've heard in a long while, right? So what does that mean to you, financial independence? Will you be working beyond? So 55 comes, you reach this point where, and by the way, I think it's important to mention at this time, when we as wealth advisors work with clients that want to help our clients achieve the goal that you're describing, we're not talking about a net worth number like, oh, I need $6 million because I'm going to take a 5% withdrawal on an annual basis. And then if I spend this much, I'll be safe with this amount left going to my heirs. No, because it's not a net worth issue, even though it could be. it's a cash flow issue because there are going to be multiple, right? I know you mentioned that old school German auto company that you worked for. The last episode, we talked with TPA setting up retirement plans. We were discussing how I think there's like 15% of Americans have a pension plan, right? But some people are going to have different ways of getting paid in retirement and stuff. What is your plan going to be when you're 55? What are you thinking about doing at that time? Like, talk to me about what financial independence looks like for you.
Well, I love what I do, but I also love sharing my knowledge. I think teaching could be a really rewarding part of my life at that point. I also have enjoyed in the past doing consulting work. I think I would enjoy doing a bit of that. I just would like the freedom to only take jobs that interest me and not that I have to take something because I financially am dependent on it.
It's a great way to put it. Okay. All right. So let's ask, let me ask this last question, because you mentioned that you just dropped an album. So I think maybe people listening at the beginning were like, hey, could you shut up about the retirement, about the money and the RSUs and all that? Tell me about this album that you just dropped on SoundCloud. And also, Joseph, I also want to mention that you're not the only one that has these passion projects behind, right? These you bring your best self to work and you work your tail off and you do all that you can and you're loyal to your company. But then you also have this creative, this spiritual outlet that you want out there. I relate to that a lot. I have my, I won't show you, but I got my guitar right here on the floor.
Nice.
So this is your chance. This is your plug for your album, but also your kind of separate identity, right? Your separate passion that keeps you inspired to do your work during the day.
Yeah. Well, to me, creative expression as a human being is super important, and it's an important part of my life. And if I couldn't express myself creatively, either through animation or music or filmmaking or whatever it is, I have a lot of different interests. I would be in pretty sad shape. So this album kind of came about because I'm a big fan of an NPR radio show called Hearts of Space. And I believe it's produced out of Berkeley. And it's been on the air on NPR for like 30-something, 40-something years, since like the early 80s. It's been around for a while. And it's primarily, instrumental, ambient, you might even call it new age music. But it's always fascinated me. It's always like ignited my imagination. Like I could listen to music like that and just see whole movies in my mind, right? It's been a really great experience. So I always wanted to try to create a concept album, because I'm a big fan of the concept album, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, all that kind of stuff. This sort of concept material is great, but I've never really seen one, and I'm sure it exists. I just haven't seen it. An all instrumental concept album. And so that's what I wanted to do in that sort of ambient genre. So I came up with this really basic story idea of this character called Adam, who is in cryostasis on a space station called Orion 1. The space station gets pulled into a wormhole, and when it comes out in a completely different galaxy, that's when our main character wakes up and starts to try to call home, and he doesn't get an answer, and he's kind of ready to sort of resign himself to this fate. And finally, he gets an answer back that says, "I'm here," but it's sort of this disembodied voice. He doesn't know where it's coming from. It's just this amorphous intelligence that's speaking to him. And over the course of this time, he begins to sort of learn all the nuances and the dangers and adventures in this new unimagined galaxy that he's found himself in. And so there's 6 tracks. It's on SoundCloud now. It's called Adam's Arc, all instrumental. I created it all in Apple's Logic Pro with plugins and soft synths and stuff like that. It was a great adventure just creating it. It's super fun. And I think I'm probably going to do another one here. I'm going to give myself a little break and try a couple other creative outlets, and I'll go back to it.
Joseph, it's hard to not think that you're Adam on this arc, right? That your original home, Birmingham, Alabama, this place that kind of just, you knew something greater was out there, right? And then all of a sudden you get sucked into this other world. Maybe that was Vancouver, maybe that's here in Santa Clara. But that's you on this arc and on this journey. And maybe all of us, right? All of us that have come to this area to really make our mark and to follow our spiritual path in a sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic, Joseph.
Thanks.
We'll make sure to post a link to your music, because I'm sure folks would be excited to hear that. That's awesome. Joseph, I got one more question for you, and maybe you already answered it. If you didn't have to work for money, what would you be doing with your time?
That's a good question. I've actually thought a lot about that. So
we're talking, let me clarify,
Mm-hmm.
Not just your mortgage is paid, your car is paid, but like anytime you wanted something, you could just have it.
Yes.
And, if you listen to Elon Musk, his TED Talk recently, and we've heard this from a lot of other people, this idea of abundance, right? That the actual lack that is a creation, right? And there's actually no lack of abundance. Abundance is a belief that we have. So he was just talking about, that in the context of artificial intelligence and about energy, and especially, in relation to his expertise. But in terms of money and the question, if it weren't even an issue, if you didn't have to stress. And I asked that because everybody stresses about money. Everyone worries about it. Everyone's worried about whether you're renting or you have a mortgage or you're trying to do this or that. Everyone stresses about it. What if you removed all those things?
Yeah.
Right? What would be left? What would be?
For me, I think obviously creative expression is a big part of that. That's one of the things I want to do. But the other big part of that for me is sharing my time, sharing my knowledge, and sharing my wealth. If I were in that situation, I see a future for myself where, I could, in addition to donating to charities that really connect with me and that mean something to me, but also, trying to spend time with young people and teach them about music, teach them about filmmaking or animation, and encouraging people who have potential and interests in a certain area that I might know something about. Ultimately, Aaron, to me, at the end of the day, it's not about, how much wealth I've accumulated or how much, things, nice cars I have. It's about, ultimately, I personally believe I will be judged on the way I treated others, right? And if I can leave this world a little better than it was when I came into it, simply by way of treating others with kindness and respect and empathy, and encouraging those to follow their dreams and passions and have that be a ripple effect out into the world, I'm happy.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I hope somebody captures the message that you shared with us today and says, you know what? This guy made a move from a city I've never heard of and a state that I've maybe heard of, Alabama, probably for all the wrong reasons on the news. And then here he comes out and builds this life and has this creative outlet and does these amazing things. I hope someone gets a little bit of a spark of inspiration and motivation to making some change in their life today. So Joseph, I really appreciate having you on here today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
I think we could probably talk for a few more hours. Maybe we'll stop the record button and continue and then leave people wanting more. The final thing I'll say is that Joseph has been a guest of mine today. Joseph does not work for LPL Financial or SGC Financial. He is a guest of our show, and he is an honored guest. And we appreciate you so much, Joseph. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And
I really enjoyed it, man. Absolutely.
All right, and maybe we'll find a way to weave in some of your music in this, but we'll definitely share the link. Congratulations on your release, and congratulations on your new role at your tech startup here in the Bay Area, Joseph. I'm so excited for you, man. Great things to come.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
All right.
Joseph, thank you so much for being a guest on our episode of Exponential Wealth today. Love having you on, and I love hearing your perspective of what folks need to be doing to take care of their financial house and keep it in order. All right. So here's my final words. Reach out and schedule time to meet with me and my team to see if we can answer questions that you have about the financial planning process. Make sure that you are doing all you can to take care of yourself and your family for today and your future selves. Aaron Moore, registered representative with and securities advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Our guest on today's show, and their company is not affiliated with SGC Financial nor LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in today's show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. The information is not intended to be a substitute for individualized financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your financial, tax, or legal professional regarding your specific situation. All right, everyone, it's been a great episode. We'll see you next time.